Welcome everybody today to our next Career Success webinar series, Leapfrog Your Career. Let me introduce myself. I'm Martin Propsch, the author of the 5 Steps to Leapfrogging Your Career and also the 5 Secrets to a Successful Relationship. I'm also the Managing Director of Profound Coaching, proudly helping career-driven individuals who are sick and tired of missing out on promotions, as well as businesses that are serious about improving their bottom line by investing into team environments, where every individual can perform at his or her best. Now, while we're waiting for a few more people to join us, let's just go through a few of the options on the control panel, especially for those of you who are new to the webinar system. Now, first of all, let me mention that this session will be recorded and will be made available to public. Well, if technology allows, I might need to say. And if you wish to take some notes, you may do so by clicking on the field at the top of your screen. Just here, as you can see, just about in the middle of your screen here where it says Notes, which can be emailed to you after the webinar. Or you may prefer to use your favorite notebooks at home, whatever suits you best. Now, because we have so many people on the call today, it's just not possible to have everybody's microphone on, otherwise it would create too much background noise. However, having said that, you can always enter a question into the question box on the left-hand corner of your screen at any time during the webinar, and that's just down here, as you can see. And please feel free to answer or to write any questions, and I will answer them as we go through the webinar. Now, during the webinar, I may also ask you to put your thumb up or down, depends on your mood, to check if you still follow me and also understand the contents. Now, this function can be found just on the right-hand side of your notes, which is indicated with my moods. So what I like to do now is I would like to just see who is on the call today. So if you can type in your name in the question box, tell me where you're from, and perhaps also the weather or what the weather is like where you're from, that would be great. Now I just start with myself. I'm from Melbourne, Australia, and the weather here is, well, what can I say? It's a typical winter day. It's actually quite cold. I think it's around 6-7 degrees. And we had quite a few drizzles as well. So I hand that over. If you can just, as I said, put your name into the question box, tell me where you're from, and perhaps also what the weather is, that would be sensational. Yeah, I just got that confirmed. I have somebody from Victoria, Australia. Cold and rainy. And very welcome to Jean-Paul from Paris in France. The weather is cloudy here in Paris. So thank you very much for logging in. Just tell me maybe what's the time of the day over there in Paris? I assume it's still morning, isn't it? 11:37. Fantastic. Now we also have Jean from Shanghai, very international today. I'm very proud of all the people calling in from all over the world. Shanghai, yeah, I'm almost getting a bit jealous here, 28 degrees, still a bit cloudy. Thank you for that, and of course also a very welcome to Shanghai. We have somebody from Queensland here. Yeah, John from Queensland, 24 degrees, sunny. So we have all the different temperatures all around. That is just fantastic. Thank you very much for logging in. and really tuning in to learn about communication, the art of communication. I'm going to get started, and I'm very conscious of your time, so I'll start with a bit of an overview. And what we're going to focus on today is get your promotion. We're focusing on implementing the art of communication. Now, communication is very important, and we're always doing it. We're doing it with our friends, we're doing it in business, but of course the question is, and that's the focus today, how effective is our communication? How can we improve the communication that our message becomes very clear to the receiver, in other words, to the person we talk to? Now, there are three areas which I want to address today. The first one is representational system. Now, you might be a bit confused with all the VAKOG. What it stands for, it's actually standing for the 5 senses which we engage in our communication. We're talking about the visual, auditory, kinesthetic, olfactory, and gustatory. More details a bit further down the track. We're also looking at chunk size and listening and speaking styles. We're all a bit unique, but somehow we all fit into one or the other section. Now, those topics, they really help us to communicate your ambition and plans to your boss, and also helps you to convince the decision makers in your company to consider you as a contestant for the next promotion. This will also build confidence in your own language and how you activate that confidence in those who actually have the power to promote you. So that's the focus of today. Does that make sense so far? So please just show me your thumbs up if that makes sense. Know that I'm on the right track. Yeah, there's a few thumbs coming up there. Makes sense. Thank you very much. I get a few comments here as well. And thumbs up, thumbs down. You also find that under my moods on top of your screen. Yeah, there's a few more thumbs coming up. Well, I think people get used to the system. And just before we really start with the representational system, if there's any doubt if these strategies are actually working, here are some of the results my client have achieved by implementing those communication strategies. So if you would like to achieve similar results for your career, please have your pen and paper ready, and I suggest you make notes throughout the next 45 to 50 minutes. By the way, who thinks I will offer you a program by the end of this webinar? Please show me some thumbs up again if you believe that I will show you some programs or offer you some programs. Yeah, there's a few thumbs coming up again. Fantastic. Now I'm happy to say you will not be disappointed. And the attendees who didn't put their hands up or thumb up will also not be disappointed, as the programs I offer are really fantastic. And you can see that from the results my previous clients have achieved. So let's get started with the representational systems. We pay attention to the outside world and gather information using our 5 senses. So let's go through them. We're starting off with the visual. So the visual is the part where we use our eyes for seeing what's happening in the outside world. We also have auditory, the hearing, kinesthetic. These are the people who really focusing on the feelings, on the moods, the gut feeling, the touch, the emotions. And to a lesser degree, we also have olfactory, the smelling, and also the gustatory, which is the tasting, which comes, of course, very handy in hospitality, as an example, where we enjoy our food and wine and beverage and so on and so on. Well, we need to understand that just as we see, hear, touch, taste and smell the outside world, we actually recreate those same sensations in our mind, which is internally. In other words, we're presenting the world to ourselves using our senses inwards. Yeah? So we use our representational system in everything we do. We need to be very clear on that. If it's memory, if it's planning, if it's even fantasizing something, or even problem solving, we're using our representational system. Now, every person has usually one or two preferred representational systems. So when we appeal to a person's preferred representational system in our communication, we really greatly increase the likelihood of getting our point across. And the receiver of the communication, so the listener, really understands what we mean in our conversation. So we get our message across, and that's very important. There's also the auditory digital, as we call the AD, which are the people who are doing a lot of self-talk. Somebody who prefers this representation system is probably interested in facts. They like figures, they like information, they like standard operational procedures, they like bullet points in their email. So they like to know how they get from A to Z. And the world around them, that needs to make sense. And of course, auditory digital quite often is what we see quite often in our business world, because there's a lot of structure. Now you can discover a person's preferred way of thinking, so the representational system, by listening to which words and phrases they actually use. To match their representational system, you use the same or similar words or phrases when you speak with them. So a visual, as you can see here, a visual, for example, they're memorized by seeing pictures and are less distracted by noise. So these are the people who usually look at you. They have really good eye contact. They often have trouble remembering and they are bored by very long verbal instructions, because quite often their mind is just wandering off. They see something else and it's gone. They are interested by how the program looks, as an example. And I'll just give you different examples along the way so you can make comparison. And you will realize that some of those representational systems you feel quite comfortable with, and some representational system you don't really feel comfortable and you think that's a bit odd. That comes down to representational system you like, which is your primary representational system, you feel comfortable, and on the other hand, the one which you don't really feel comfortable with is actually the area you need to improve. And I'll give you some more information along the way. Now, what I would say to a visual person, I would say, well, if I could show you an attractive way in which you could potentially benefit, you would at least want to look at it, wouldn't you? So you can see there's a lot of show, attractive look. And I may would add to it, if this looks good to you, we will go ahead and focus, again, a visual thing, focus on getting the paperwork in. Now on the slide you can see a few more, and of course that's just a few bullet points to indicate what to look for if you're dealing with a visual person. So an eyeful, it appears to me, can you paint a picture, bird eye view, and also on and so on. This clearly indicates that you're talking to a visual person. Where is an auditory person? So let's go to the second one, where an auditory person typically are easily distracted by noise. They can hear everything. In a workshop, they are distracted by the air conditioning, where perhaps a visual don't even hear. They can repeat things back to you easily and learn by listening. Quite often the people, they don't need to look at you, they actually have the ear towards the speaker. They look down on the papers, they listen with the ear, and they write the notes down. So there's no visual required. Of course, they like music and they love to talk on the phone. They love the tone of voice, and the words are very important for auditory people. So in that case, I would say, if I could tell you a way in which could potentially benefit you, you would at least like to hear about, wouldn't you? And if that sounds good, so you hear, tell, sounds good, we will go ahead and discuss how to set up an account. Even in an email, people tend to say, I'm looking forward to see you. I'm interested what you have to say. So that already indicates the representational system of different people. Then there are also the kinesthetic people. I call them the huggers, and I'm actually one of them, believe it or not. The kinesthetic people who are often, they talk slowly, they breathe deeply, they respond to physical rewards and touching. They memorize doing things by walking through something or actually doing it themselves. They will be interested in a program that feels right and gives them the right gut feeling. This is where you would say, if I could get, or if I could help you get a hold of a concrete way in which you could potentially benefit, you would at least want to get a feel for it, wouldn't you? And if this feels good for you, you will go ahead and set up, or we will go ahead and set up an account by handling all the paperwork. So again, you can hear the different words which are chosen to explain or to say the same thing, but to a different person. So you have to get hold of concrete, get a feel for, feels good, handling. These would be all kinesthetic words. And on the list, as you can see it as well, maybe make some notes, it boils down to, quite often here in Australia, people say, oh, it just boils down to, or I want to get a handle on it or a grip on it. Please, can you get in touch with me tomorrow? Typical kinesthetic communication. And last but not least, we have AD people, so the audio-digital, auditory-digital. They spend a fair amount of time talking to themselves. They memorize by steps, procedures, and sequences. They will want to know the program makes sense. They like bullet points, as I said, in the email. And usually these are the people who proofread and double check an email 2 or even 3 times before they actually hit the send button. Now, dealing with an auditory digital person, you could say, if I could outline and explain a way which you could potentially benefit, you would at least want to go through step by step. So you can make an informed decision. This will allow us to consider the next step, wouldn't it? So these are the 4 different representational systems we have. Now I would like to show you a poll, and I'm interested in the representational systems you have. And I just bring up a poll, and I hope you can just see what is your personal representational system. If you could just click on the one which feels really comfortable for you, that would be great, and then just submit your votes, and I will reveal the results just in a minute. There's a few more coming in, hopefully. Yeah, it's a few more. So if everybody can contribute there, that would be great. It's just a matter of clicking one of those representational systems, submit your vote, and that's pretty much it. So let's stop the voting. Not everyone has put it in, but that's okay. And let's see what we have. And I hope you can see the results there, quite interesting. And if we make a comparison with the slides, we do have 25% visual, none of the people are auditory. Kinesthetic, we have 50%, which leaves us with auditory digital 25%. Very interesting. So no auditory people on the webinar tonight, which they would absolutely love. Maybe there are some which haven't really voted. I'm going to bring up a few more polls later on, and please feel free to contribute. It gives us, of course, something to analyze and discuss. So thank you very much for the ones who voted. So it seems that I need to reinforce my kinesthetic, which is actually natural to me, because that's 50% of the people on the call. Now, having said that, it's not as easy, because it would work on a one-on-one. In a group environment, the structure or the strategy is a bit different, because I want to make sure I'm going to involve everyone. In other words, there's a big learning in there. If I now consider I'm only going to do kinesthetic language, I actually losing 50%, which is 25 of the visual and 25% of auditory digital. I will lose those people along the way. They will be bored. They may even leave the webinar. So in a group environment, it's very important that the presenter is actually switching back and forth all the time, if that makes sense. Can you hear what I'm saying? And I hope you can paint a picture. So I just threw a few things in from the representation system again to indicate how the communication to a group would actually work. Fantastic. Let's close that poll and let's go back to the slides. Are there any questions so far? Just give me some feedback. How are we traveling? What are the learnings you had? How does everything feel, look, sound like? Can you just give me your thumbs up if everything is okay? Or perhaps just put a few questions through. That's a good time to actually answer them before we go into the chunk size filters. No, all good? Fantastic. Let's move to the next one. And as I said, we're talking about the chunk size. Now that is of course also a very important communication strategy. This filter is very important in communication and in training, and actually relates to how people best receive and incorporate information. So let me just bring up another poll, and let's just start with that one at the moment. Give me just 1 second. And I would like to have another look on who we have on the call here. So let's just start voting. And the question here is, if we were going to do a project together, would you want to know only the details? Would you be interested only in the big picture? Would you be interested first in all the details, but you would also like to know the big picture afterwards? Or are you first interested in the big picture, so in the outcome, and then you still would need to know the details on how to get there? Just a few more words coming in there. All right, let's have a look on that one. Now, what we have here is a bit different story. We actually have, interestingly, we don't have anyone which is really detailed. We don't have anyone which is purely big picture. We actually do have 33% on specifics, but then also would like to see the big picture or know the big picture, and we have 60, just over 60% on people who need to have the big picture and then the details as well. I just got a question through here. I did not know about AD, and it's not 100% clear for me yet. So before we maybe continue, I would like to answer that question. Now, auditory digital is the self-talk we have in our own mind, and hopefully I'm not the only one when I'm talking about the voices which are actually talking to us. It's just normal. We all have them. So the self-talk, where we think to ourselves, the questions we ask ourselves in silence all day long. What's happened if I do this? What impact does it have? Should I do it? What happened the last time? Oh, last time I failed, I shouldn't do this anymore. So it's the conversation you have with yourself in silence. You're thinking, in other words. So people with auditory digital, they want to make sure that everything makes sense. They want to make sure that every gap is filled. They want to have security in the business. They want to have systems in place that everybody know exactly step by step on what to do. So there's a sense of control in there, of certainty in there, in that thinking as well. And I hope that answers the question. Fantastic. Now, can I say, please, at this point, there is no right or wrong. That's very important. So we're not here to judge. We're not here to say one is better than the other one. It's the way we work. It's important for us to go through the communication strategy, not to judge, but to be able to adjust to communication, that we have better outcomes, that we are able to get our message across. In other words, that we don't have a communication breakdown. Now, those questions, they are not designed to label you in any way or to put you in a box. No, it's about knowing what makes you tick. So how you operate in the daily life and how you naturally communicate. This will create awareness for you and give you the opportunity also to understand where and perhaps why your communication broke down in the past. And with some work colleagues or even superiors, they are the people who you connect really easily. And they are the people you just really struggle to connect. You just don't know what's happened, but you just don't get into it. And quite often that's the case because you actually have an opposite communication style. So both of you perhaps talking their own language rather than being able to adapt the language to the other person so the person can actually receive the meaning, the message you want to give them. Hopefully that makes sense. Now, this will also, the awareness you have then, this will also allow you to practice those easy but very powerful communication strategies in the future. So with the first one, I want you to go out there, listen to what words people use, and then adjust your language according to them, and you will see you will connect very quickly. People will tell other people that you're such a good communicator. Why? Because you adapted to their language. That's all there is to it. And exactly those communication strategies, they're actually the ones in the future who will help you to improve your career profile. And will open up a lot of opportunities in your career, I can just say that. Yeah? So, as we said with the chunk size, going back to the chunk size, people will prefer either specifics, so the small size, the details, and you see how the auditory digital actually works in quite well. Information to the global, big pictures, the purpose, the vision, the mission of the company, what legacy, what values, what does the company stand for, or even the individual. What is your higher intention? What is this all about? The goal setting, which is the big picture, in other words. The budget, the 5-year plan, working towards an outcome in the future, versus people who quite often are very auditory digital, which are really good in specific small chunks details. They want to know exactly what, how, where, when, and who's going to do it. Very planned. Now, quite often you will see in business the people who are successful, let's say, lawyers, financial planners, and I do generalize here a bit, I do apologize, but that's what we do. But to get my point across, people will be really good in those occupations because they are very auditory digital. They are very good in making sense in structure, procedures, following step by step. An IT person, a financial planner, one small mistake can change the whole outcome. So they are very, very particular and specific in what they do. Versus a CEO of the company. A CEO of the company cannot micromanage, he cannot do the small things. He needs to think big. Quite often, good CEOs, and I have to say again, I generalize a bit here, but quite often really good CEOs are the ones which have a really long, good vision. They can see themselves and the company in the future 5 years down the track. Quite often don't ask them how to get there, but they have the vision. So it's very important that these CEOs or senior management employ the opposite, the specific people, auditory digital, to do the job on how to get them there. Quite often, differences also attract by appreciating that the differences can fill the gap, can fill the missing part of the manager, rather than judging them. I hope that makes sense. So really, let's go through. Now, we didn't have any people on the votes there. Let's just close that off. They're the people, and especially in the meeting room, they're the people who are just interested in the vision. They always think big. They're always talking about the big picture. They want to become entrepreneurs and making a multi-million-dollar business within the next year, but they don't really have an idea how to get there. Now, in a meeting room, it's very important to have that vision. And if you then have people who actually really like specifics, they quite often will hold the company vision back because they're thinking in too small chunks. They think, oh my God, where do we get all the paper clips from? Do we have enough envelopes? Who's going to hold this? The overwhelm kicks in other words. Yeah? So I hope that makes sense. Now, I would like to go a bit further and I'll show you another slide, still with the chunk size filter. This chunk size filter really describes how to master the art of effective communication by controlling the flow of conversation or ideas from abstract to specific, and of course vice versa. Now, this is really, you need to write that down. This is a fantastic and it's a really vital tool for you to understand if you want to leapfrog your career. In other words, if you want to get more recognition, if you want to increase your career profile, if you want to get a promotion, you need to be able to chunk up and down, as we call, going up and down from global to specific, from specific to global, in a very fast way. So many communication, as I said before, they break down or there's a lot of misunderstanding by simply having a mismatch of chunk size. So for example, let's call him Luke. Luke maybe use smaller chunks. So he is down here in the specifics. And then Jack, let's call him Jack, he's actually up here, really up in the abstract, in the global. And he actually regards him to be very vague up here. He's very vague, he's too out there, it doesn't make sense. I have no idea what he's talking about because he talks about the 5-year vision. Now Jack may see Luke as very terribly boring. He's so boring. He's just not getting to the point. He's going around in circles. He's really good in explaining all the details which I'm not really interested. So actually, there is a miscommunication. The whole thing breaks down. So in a meeting, just to understand, coming back to the meeting, Jack will talk about the vision, mission, the goal, the 5-year planning up here, and the purpose of the company. Luke down here, let's call him in the mailroom with all respect, or the IT person, the financial planner, the lawyer, which crosses the T's and dots the I's, is only interested in the specific information how to get there. And of course, he doesn't get all that information. It's too far ahead. We have 5 years' time, in other words. Now, it's incredibly beneficial to be able to chunk, as I said, with chunking, we call that chunking, going up and down, when you need to improve your communication. So when talking to someone using big chunks, they are too big, somebody's up here, but you would like to bring them down into the specifics, you can ask questions like, can you give me a specific example of that? Or how exactly are you going to do it? Can you explain me more? And that will give you more details. On the other hand, when you're talking to somebody using small chunks down here, then before you get too bored with the person, you can actually ask questions like, that's interesting. So what is the intention of this? Why are we doing all the work here? So you actually bring them and you encourage them to create larger chunks and to move up on the communication ladder here. As you can see, there's also a lateral thinking. I just added that one to the slide. And we call that actually chunking across. Chunking across is what else? That's really an important thinking structure as well, where you can ask what else? What other opportunities do we have? What would be another example of that? What other solutions could we consider? This is called chunking across, as I said. So having purely the ability to easily and effortlessly chunking up, down, and across will give you the opportunity to increase your earning power. Absolutely. The faster you can do this, the better you become at thinking outside the box, becoming an entrepreneur. So when you witness an executive discussing a business plan, marketing strategies, trends, so on and so on, you realize that these conversations are very highly chunked up into the abstract and long-term planning. Now, trying to get specifics at this point in time is not going to help the vision of the company and to move forward. So on the other hand, dreaming big all the time without being able to chunk down into specifics to move towards and desired outcomes won't be useful either. So really, I have to say it again, true entrepreneurs and leaders have the thinking flexibility to climb up, down, and across on demand at appropriate times. Depends on the situation, in other words. So I'll give you a short presentation on how you can chunk from, let's say, food. We like food. We have somebody here from Paris. Paris is well known for beautiful food, fresh baguette, so on and so on. So let me chunk from food to something really high up and abstract, which could be in a piece. Now, do you see how that works? Well, I think it's actually completely two different things. Yeah. So there's hardly any connection between food and inner peace, but I will be able to demonstrate on how you get from food to inner peace. So let's do the exercise and hopefully you can follow me. Otherwise, please feel free to ask questions. And I guide you through and I hope you can see the cursor on the screen. So let's start here, food. And I start to chunk down into specifics. So what type of food is there around? Well, we can say there is meat, chunking down. Meat is a type of food group. Oh, okay, that's interesting. Tell me more. What else is out there other than food? Well, there's also fish and seafood. What else? Well, there could be also, there's actually also berries. Now I'm chunking laterally. Chunking down. So what's berries? Or you can say there's also stone fruits to give you more lateral thinking. There are exotic fruits. Chunking down. What type of exotic fruits? Well, there are pineapples. What else? What other pineapple? What other exotic fruit? Sorry. Bananas. Oh, that's interesting. So chunking up, to give you that example as well. Well, bananas, for what purpose are bananas there? Well, they're really good. They give you nutrition. What else do they give you? Well, they give you vitamins. What else? They also give you energy. Why do you need energy? For what purpose? Well, energy is really good so you can go to work. And for what purpose? Well, you can earn more money. You see, I'm chunking up now, and I can also chunk down. So tell me specifically, so what are you going to use the money for? I'm chunking down. Well, I'm going to use the money to look after my family. And why would you do that? Chunking up. Because I love them. And what's the higher intention of loving them? What is that going to give you? Well, it gives me a sense of belonging. And how does that make you feel? And do you see actually how I throw some emotion in here? So I'm starting to use kinesthetic language and visual, which is up there. Well, that makes me really feel good about myself. And what's the highest intention of feeling good about yourself? Well, it's about to love and respect myself. And what would be the highest intention of that? What is that ultimately all about? Well, it's about to experience inner peace. So I hope you can see with that small demonstration that you can actually chunk anything to anywhere if you make the links where you simply use chunking up, chunking down, chunking across. Now I give you a bit more insight, especially for the people who may need to deal with some conflict situations. Mediation is very important as well. Simply this chunking size communication helps you to resolve any conflicts. And really have paper and pen ready and make some notes that really help you to solve a lot of issues in the future, or making sure they don't even appear in the first place. Let's think of a conflict. Let's think of creating what we call an agreement frame. An agreement frame is up here, in other words. And can we say that world peace is quite high up there, it's quite abstract? Can we say that everybody wants world peace? Give me a thumbs up if you like world peace. Who likes world peace? Yeah, everybody? Yeah, there's a few more missing. Yeah. So I would say about 90% of people actually put their hands up. Everybody, almost everyone loves world peace. That's called an agreement frame. We agree on something which is the same. In other words, we want to have the same outcome. That's a good starting point. Can we agree that if it comes to the specifics down here, that's where the problem starts, because every one of us has a different view on how we can create world peace. And that's where the problem starts. We all have our own specifics and not realizing that we all want the same. So what I would do in a mediation, what you can do in your workplace with your team or even with your supervisor, you can manage the communication by chunking up, chunking down, or chunking across at any given time. So we agreed on world peace, we're chunking down. So how are we going to do that? What do we need to be able to do? Where we can do it, when do we do it, and who is actually part of us? Who's going to support us? All the specifics. As further down you go into details, you will hit boundary conditions. You will hit a bit of a wall where people start to get aggravated, where people maybe start to disagree. If that's the case, what you're going to do is you're going to look for other solutions. Alright, it seems that is not a solution, it's not a situation we can consider. What else could we do instead? So we explore other opportunities until we find solutions for everybody involved. What are you willing to do? Is the other person willing to do? What do we have in common? Until we find a way and we start chunking down even further. If we hit a bit of a brick wall, if we realize people going back into a negative emotion from time to time, it simply helps to remind people that they actually want the same thing. And that takes the pressure off. That brings it back to an agreement frame, and people start to be willing again to actually negotiate and find solutions. And you're doing the same thing again. You're chunking down, you're chunking across as required until you find solutions to the problem. How good is that? Can you give me some feedback on that one before we move on? Yeah, I get that is very useful. Thank you very much. I'm going to try that out tomorrow. Awesome. Good on you. I wish I would knew that 10 years ago. That's a good one, yes. I think this knowledge will really help me to talk to everybody around me. New notion for me, yeah. Fantastic. So I get quite a few good comments. I can't read them all, but yeah, fantastic. How simple is it? Simple but very powerful. So I suggest you guys practicing, and as more you use it, as more you feel comfortable, as more you take control of the communication. Well done. Great, let's go to the last one. And that really focuses on literal and inferential thinking. Now, I'm talking about masculine literal thinking and inferential female or feminine energy, I should say. In other words, inferential, and there's two different things. There's the listening and then there's the speaking part of it. Now, an inferential listener, let's start with that one, listener first. An inferential listener will interpret what is communicated to them and will act accordingly to the meaning they give to the communication. So in communicating with them, it is very important to understand that they will fill the gaps. So they're reading between the lines quite often. Versus the literal thinker or listener, let's stay with the listener. The literal listener will take the communication word for word. He will not fill in any blanks. Yeah, he just does what he said or what he's told. So when communicating to them, make sure to be very clear with your instruction and expectations. So don't expect them to do things which you did not tell them very clear. I hope that makes sense. Now let's see at an example. An example could be where somebody says, "Oh, I'm really thirsty." That's an inferential speaker. So the literal listener, therefore, would say, "Oh yeah, why is she telling me? Yeah, I'm actually thirsty too. So what?" So nothing happens. Of course, what the inferential person actually means is, "Can you please get me a glass of water, perhaps? Or a glass of wine? I don't know." I'm very literal as well. So it creates confusion, it creates expectations which are quite often not fulfilled. And I'm generalizing, but quite often it happens between female and male, between feminine energy and masculine energy. Yeah. In the workplace, it's very important that we become aware of how people listen and how people speak. So if I have a clear task for a literal person, I need to be very clear and I need to spell it out. An inferential person would maybe say, "Oh, look at all the boxes which came in this morning. That is amazing." Literal person would say, "Oh yeah, look at this. This is huge. There's so many boxes." Well, it's not what the inferential person wants to hear. What the inferential person means is, "Can somebody help me to get all that stuff into the store?" Not picked up by literal people. So you need to be very clear when communicating to a literal. There's a lot of boxes. We need to move them now. Please give me a hand. It can be still polite by asking please, but there needs to be a clear instruction. Yeah? I hope that came across as well. So this is, just to repeat, inferential thinking. Not very out there, not very clear. They give always clues and hints and so on and so on, and you need to fill in the gaps by yourself. You become almost expected to be a bit of a mind reader. Creates a lot of problems. Literal, quite often they come across to inferential as quite rude because they're straight to the point. So again, it's not about what you are, well, it's important to be aware how you operate, how you communicate, but it's the skill to adapt to the other person, to speak their language. Are there any questions so far? Yeah. I get a few comments here, no question, but I get a few comments. Now that really makes sense. That explains a lot. Yeah, fantastic. Whatever that means, yeah. Now I understand why my husband doesn't do what I tell him to do. Yes, so I can hear some inferential comments through a literal person which is a bit confused because he doesn't really know what is expected of him. So to do yourself and to do your husband a favor, be very clear, be very bold and blunt with your message. Tell him what needs to be done, and I'm sure he will be very thankful to you. Fantastic. Yeah, new notions again under these names. Jean-Paul, you may have heard some of those things in different contents. Is that what you're saying? Let's see if something comes back from Jean-Paul. Yes, fantastic. And yes, I think it's very helpful as well if you hear it in a different language, if you hear it in a different content. And just to be clear, all those communication strategies, we can not only use them in your career, you can use them in your leadership, in your relationship, you can use them with your kids, you can use them in your school. Whatever you do, you can use those communication skills. Very important. Fantastic. So, can I just say, these are the strategies that my clients have used to increase their profit and profile as well. These are the strategies they got or used to get a promotion. And actually, these are also the strategies, or some of the strategies, that they enabled them to earn more money, as you can see on the slides. And as I said, if these are the sort of results you would like to achieve, these are the strategies you need to implement. These strategies are also further explained in my book, The 5 Steps to Leapfrogging Your Career. So if you believe that you would benefit from an assessment and a report on where you are right now, I suggest our Tell Me What to Do program. Now, let me tell you about the programs, and I said to you, I'm not going to disappoint you in the beginning of the workshop or seminar, webinar, I should say. This is our 30-day program. This is our 30-day program, which includes 2 one-on-one coaching sessions with me. That can be done, of course, over the computer, just as we're doing the webinar here, anywhere in the world. This can be also done locally here in Melbourne for the locals, face-to-face. There's always some opportunities. Now, as I said, they include 2 one-on-one coaching sessions with me, which focuses on your business profile. It will give you great insight on your communication, motivation, and also working style. So today we just touched base on the communication. We're going to expand on that. and then we're also going to look at motivation and working style as well. You will also receive a copy of my book, so the 5 Steps of Leapfrogging Your Career, and also unlimited email support for the 30 days, and that's for an investment of, and that just disappeared on me here, $12.90 plus GST. Now, for everyone who signs up for this program today, I will price to $9.90 plus GST, which will save you, in other words, over $300 Australian dollars. Yeah. If you're interested, just send me an email to info@profoundcoaching.com.au before midnight Australian Eastern Standard Time. So we're talking about 4 hours. With a subject line similar or something along the line, tell me what to do, webinar discount, and I promise you I will be in touch with you before the end of this week to organize the first session. Now, if you're really serious about your profile or personal development and also your career success, this is really what I want you to offer. I offer a 3-month, what I call signature program, which includes everything from the previous package. So the business profile is in there, plus coaching, plus mentoring and support. Now in this package, I will spend time with you one-on-one on a weekly basis for 3 months. I show you the strategies that you should use and implement, specifically tailored to your needs. Yeah? And that's important so you can achieve the results you want to achieve. Now this program is really great for career-driven individuals, middle management who wants to actually move up into senior management roles, or even business owners who really want to make a difference, create team dynamics who actually increases the bottom line and eventually pay them more as well at the end of the month. This is really good for individuals who have high technical skills. So they're really good in what they do, technical skills, but they want more soft skills, so the leadership skills, the communication skills, so on and so on. And that really gives you long-term sustainable strategies. It also gives you accountability and support for the implementation. So if you want to raise your profile, move up the career ladder and earn more money, this is the perfect package for you. Now in this 3-month package, you can choose topics that will support you the most, and it will show you step by step on how you can adapt communication strategies as we just discussed today. Leadership skills, working well under pressure, conflict resolution, interpersonal skills, building relationships, emotional intelligence, empowerment, talking about confidence, self-motivation, and many more things. So there's a wealth of knowledge which I would love to share with you. Now this investment for the 3-month package, $9.90 plus GST, and that's per month. However, please listen carefully. For every person on the call tonight who makes the decision right now and actually signs up for this package by sending their name and the phone number simply through the question box, which is on the top left-hand or bottom left-hand corner, before the end of this webinar, I will give you a ridiculous price. I will give you a price for this particular package for only $840 plus GST. In other words, you're going to save over $450 over the 3-month period. So everybody on today's call has the unique opportunity to take advantage of this 3-month package. Show me how to do it. So for the reduced price, and I say that again, of $840 per month, just simply send through the name and the phone number before the end of this call. And again, I promise you I will be in touch with you before the end of the week to organize the first session. So I think I promised you in the beginning that I will not disappoint you, and I think they are just really fantastic two packages which I offer right now. That's really only one-off to the webinar. That's the usual prices which I charge for the packages, as I had said before. Yeah. So just quickly reminding you guys, there is two packages. One is the Tell Me What to Do. That's the 30-day program. That is pretty much based on people who want to learn about themselves and what makes them tick. So it focuses on the business profile. There is a questionnaire, there is a profile, and there is an unpack session with me as well. All up 2 sessions where we give you a lot of value to understand how you operate, how you work, and how you can improve working style, motivation, and communication in your career. And for the people who are really serious and the people who actually hit the career plateau, which are sick and tired of being stuck in their current job and missing out on promotions and also other opportunities, I really offer that signature program, Show Me How to Do It, which is 3 months for $840 per month. So let me see if there are any questions before I move on. Yeah, I think there's a lot of thinking. There's a few thumbs coming up. Thank you very much. Yeah, awesome value. Yeah, absolutely it is. Fantastic. Thank you. Yeah, fantastic. Now, for the people who are still not sure on their next career step, that's okay, absolutely okay. For those people on the call, I would like to offer a complimentary evaluation session. Now, this session will allow you to spend 1 hour with me, and that's one-on-one, to discover what the next step for you might be. So during the conversation, I will always provide you with solutions to ensure that you walk away at the end of the session by being really better off than you were at the start. That's my promise. Yeah. However, I also want to make sure that everybody's aware that at this point, no discount will be offered for any packages. And I think that's just fair enough for everybody else who just puts the name and phone number to the question box. If you're interested on getting a free evaluation, that's fine. Please go on to our website, www.profoundcoaching.com.au, complimentary evaluation request form. If you don't want to write the whole thing down, just go on to our homepage. You will find banners with the complimentary evaluation straight on the homepage. Just click on it and register. And again, I will be in touch shortly to organize that session. Now, before I share the secrets of communication with you, I want to see if there's any questions left. No, that's okay. If you have any questions, you can also contact me privately after the event. My email is info@profoundcoaching.com. I say that again, info@profoundcoaching.com. There you go. So let me just finish off by letting you know what the secret of communication is, and some of you maybe already guessed it. Communication is not about what you say. It's about the response you get. I say that one more time. Communication is not about what you say, it's about the response you get. So make sure you speak the language of the other person rather than your own one. Because that really truly will help you build rapport, trust, and communicate effectively with your team, but also your superiors and senior management. And remember, the more you master your soft skills, such as those communication strategies, the more successful you will be in your career. Very important to understand. And as you're thinking of whether you should sign up for a career coaching and professional mentoring package, let me ask, do you really have a choice about taking action? Think about that. Do you have a choice? Do you want the things to be different? Do you want things to change? Now, people always have excuses for not taking action. It's not at the right time, maybe later, or I didn't have the money. But in the end, it's really all about choices. Well, in career, let me tell you, there are two types. There's the now or the too late. So you can have excuses or you can have results, but you can't have both. So it's about choices on how people spend their time and how people spend their money and what priorities they put on both. So yes, you do have a choice. Don't confuse choice with excuses. And if you decide to think about it and do nothing, that's actually also a choice. Because you decided to do nothing. And you actually say, without saying it, that you are quite happy with the things the way they are. And that's your choice. And that's okay. That's absolutely fine. So I just wanted to leave you with one last thought for today. And that is the definition of insanity. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting something different to happen. And that's by Albert Einstein. So until next time, take care, and may your career and your results be as you plan them. Thank you very much.